When I first got into the shooter genre, the concept of being good was pretty universally simple. Aiming, positioning, hell, reaction time. If you had a sense for these things, it's not hard to imagine that if you were good at shooting somebody in one game, you'd be pretty good at it in another.
Oh my God!
And so people began to look at another aspect of combat. Instead of just running and shooting, how about running, shooting, and jumping? Maybe throw in a strafe or two, perhaps a prone. But even with all these techniques, back then, in the early days, you were still mostly confined within the boots on the ground action of the game. I say mostly. Devs wanted to experiment, people wanted to change, and so why not change up something gamers were already trying to break the mold on? Well, I'm sure these games can't be that much different. Die! Holy shit! Doom, Ultrakill, the finals. While they're all as different as they can be, the ability to zoom around and dunk on your enemies remains present throughout all of them. But when it comes to movement shooters, the one that's probably the most slept on and forgotten has got to be Titanfall 2. Is what you thought I would say, right? Because that's gonna be a hell no from me. Oh, but Rage, Titanfall 2 is like dying and no one ever appreciates it ever. Whenever somebody says, oh man, Titanfall 2 was so underrated, I can't help but slightly cringe. Everybody and their mom knows how great this game is. Titanfall 2 itself has constantly been talked about around the world, and even if they haven't played the game itself, they surely know about it through its cousin. Yeah, we don't like to talk about him. Anyways, my point is, Titanfall 2 isn't underrated. With the game being out for 8 years about now, it's more like the game is outdated rather than underrated. That's why most people usually play the campaign, but they don't stick around for the multiplayer. And yeah, that's about it. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Also make sure to join the Discord.
Well, I was wondering if Titanfall 2 wasn't the forgotten movement shooter you were talking about, then what game is it?
You really want to know. Fine. I guess I can talk about it. It's Titanfall.
But you just said it's not Titanfall 2.
I know what I said.
Titanfall. Notice the lack of what some people call
The number 2.
Starting at the beginning, the first Titanfall didn't exactly seem all that promising. If you didn't know, Respawn was founded by two people, Vince Zampella and Jason West, two very prominent people in the FPS market, because, you know, they also founded Infinity Ward, the studio behind the Call of Duty series.
Oh, Riot Shield! I'm a pussy that use Riot Shield!
Okay, but wait, if they founded such a legendary studio, why did they make Respawn? Well, this is massively overstating it, but basically, a lawsuit happened. Still, after leaving, they would partner up with
Yay.
in 2010 to develop a new game codenamed R1 for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. And as you can probably guess, this would go on to be Titanfall. During this 4 years of development though, Respawn was kinda just winging it. I mean, just look at this first piece of concept art. It's, certainly unique. Hell, they even considered adding demons at one point. It wasn't until a year later, in 2011, that a concept even remotely resembling Titanfall was considered at all, thanks to Steve Fukuda. This concept would give birth to characters you may know, such as Sarah and the Marvins, and weirdly enough, they wanted FPS Russia, yes, that FPS Russia, to voice a character called Vector. Sadly though, the character got cut. But even with this concept in the air, development would not go any smoother. With the ongoing lawsuit between Vince and Jason, oftentimes parts of the studio would be left without any direction or leadership for days at a time. This would form an internal rift in the studio, and the tensions between the developers apparently almost escalated to physical violence. As time went on, more issues arrived, like the debate between multiplayer and single player, employees leaving the studio, the plans of a PS4 release going down the drain, and to make it worse, even Jason West was starting to feel uneasy about the game. Nonetheless, Titanfall was released to the masses on March 11, 2014, and well, it was actually pretty universally loved. I mean, who doesn't love dropping into a battlefield with giant-ass robots? During its first month, it sold around 925,000 physical copies between the Xbox and PC. Considering that this didn't include online sales, Titanfall was definitely making its presence known. However, it still had its fair share of problems, and only 2 years later, Titanfall 2 would completely overshadow its previous title. Now, I hesitate to call this a review because, well, in Titanfall 1's current state, it's just simply impossible to even review all of it. Between player numbers barely reaching the double digits, and with attrition basically being the only mode available to play, it's hard to justify a full review in the first place. Hell, I'm not even playing on a standard version of the game, but instead a modded community version that has quality of life features such as being able to join private matches by yourself, almost necessary. What I can do, however, is cover the core fundamentals: movement, gunplay, and the feels. Starting with something we all love, it's movement. And at the time of release, Titanfall 1's movement was kind of revolutionary for the average gamer. At this point in time, the Xbox One is a pretty fresh console, and with the hype of Titanfall being developed by ex-Call of Duty devs, the average console gamer was introduced to a level of motion and verticality that extended beyond going up the stairs or middling a ledge. But once you actually start playing for a little bit, you come to realize that, wow, it's pretty bare bones. At least I realized that because I'd become spoiled by Titanfall 2 already. Now, if you didn't know, I've actually speedrun Titanfall 2 before. In fact, if you look right now, I'm currently placed in the top 100 at number 86. Not bad. And I'll tell you right now, there's quite a huge difference in the depth of movement between the games. In Titanfall 1, you can wall kick to gain speed, bunny hop, and strafe. You can learn all that in like a minute tops. In Titanfall 2,
the main thing I want you to remember when it comes to movement in this game is that everything influences everything. Tap strafing is arguably the most straightforward way to take advantage. A basic slide hop can be performed by initiating a double slide boost and then jump very fast every time.
Granted, in Titanfall 1, there's still a skill curve of not bashing your head against the wall, but compared to Titanfall 2, the movement is undeniably more linear. Coupled with the fact that you can slide, with muscle memory, it feels like someone took a bat and crushed my kneecaps. The gunplay is pretty standard, I think. Even with all that movement, it all comes down to how it feels to shoot a gun. However, it feels kind of unrewarding. Like, sure, there's the sound of the hit markers and stuff, but I feel like it lacks a certain oomph to it, you know? And then there's also the visibility issue. In Titanfall 2, everything is pretty clear. Pretty much anything that can harm you is outlined, and because of the colors, everything tends to stand out, which is actually pretty great. Because when everybody's flying around all over the place, it helps to see what you're actually shooting at, even if the art style becomes a little too color saturated. On the other hand, you have Titanfall 1. While its gritty undertones and grayer colors definitely make me feel more immersed in the war that's going on around me, half the time I can barely process what's going on. For weapons, there's definitely a severe lack of distinct guns with a measly 10 primary weapons compared to Titanfall 2's 21. And depending on how you look at it, Titanfall 1's Titan combat either feels 10 times better or 10 times worse. Maybe I'm just not used to it yet, but damn, the Titans in 1 just feel so weak. Whether I'm in Titan combat or getting harassed by pilots, I just feel like my Titan isn't lasting as long as it should. Then again, it's probably just a skill issue. Being doomed is also now a guaranteed death sentence, as then the remaining health slowly ticks down even if you're not taking damage. Oh, and the Titan cores do seem a bit underwhelming. However, I do think Titanfall earns some points through the Titan customization, as you can switch between chassis types, and you can also switch between weapons. Although it's clear that some weapons are just way better than other ones. And trust me, there is more I could talk about, like the burn card system or the well-designed maps. But regardless, Titanfall 1 feels like it just wasn't meant to last for more than a couple of years. In fact, I'm sure you could even call it just a super early access build of Titanfall 2 and people would believe you. The truth is, everything in Titanfall 1 mechanics just feels outdated. And considering Titanfall 2 pretty much improved everything within that 2-year release date, it's no surprise that Titanfall 1 was forgotten in the dust. Does that mean it's a bad game? Of course not. And I do wish it got more recognition like its younger brother. But in the end, the outcome was pretty predictable, so all we can do is recognize it now. And yeah, that's about it. If you want to ask me questions or hang out with the community, join the Discord server down below. And if you want to get early access to videos and extra perks, you can also join through YouTube memberships. Anyways, that's gonna be all from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.